we'll call to order the Bedford Township Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for August 8th. First, we'll do introduction of members and representatives. We'll start with staff first.
Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning.
Got to get this microphone up for our IT guy. Phil Goldsmith, Township Attorney.
Katrina Ingram, Planning and Zoning.
Dennis Kohler, Building Inspector.
Jeff Wilson, BZA member.
Jake Lake, BZA Chair.
Bob Potter, alternate on BZA.
Kyle Darris, Vice Chair.
Brad Helm, Planning Commission Representative.
All right. Next, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jody, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Helm,
Here.
Mr. Dersch,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Potter,
Here.
Mr. Lake.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next, we'll do the approval of tonight's agenda. I'll look for a motion to approve the current agenda.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. We'll move on to the next, which should be the approval of the minutes of our July 11th meeting. For anyone that was present, if you'd like to make a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
All right, one abstain. Next, we'll move on.
Here.
Oh, I know you weren't. New business. We're going to have a public hearing regarding the appeal of property on, let's see, that's 10138 Secor Road in Temperance. Looks like we've got some variance requests, 3 of them. I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing is open. Ms. Rector, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, the applicant is Deidre Lavoie, 3083 West Erie Road, Temperance, Michigan. The variance location is 10138 Secor Road in Temperance, Michigan. Authorized representative is Mr. Anthony Bresco from Bresco and Janos Attorneys and Counselors at Law, 8160 Secor Road, Lambertville. Property number 5802-008-01000 on approximately 6 acres. Current zoning is Ag 2, Secondary Agricultural, Rural Residential, and it is master plan, Secondary Agricultural, Rural Residential. The variance is requested for parcel 1, resulting a variance of 40-foot frontage variance and a 1.5 acre variance with the existing dwelling, and parcel 2 is a 92-foot frontage variance. The existing parcel consists of approximately 6 acres with 198 feet of frontage on Secor Road. The applicant is seeking to split the 6-acre parcel into 2 parcels in an Ag 2 Secondary Agricultural Rural Residential Zoning District. Per section 400-1800 Schedule of Regulations, a minimum of 2.5 acres and 165 feet of frontage is required. The variance is requested. The applicant has submitted a plot layout, Exhibit A, showing parcel 1 resulting with 125 feet of frontage on Secor Road and maintaining the house with 1 acre. Parcel 2 will result with 73 feet of frontage on Secor Road and the remaining plus or minus 5 acres. On page 2 of the submittal, the applicant and Mr. Bresco have defined the hardship and practical difficulties of the property in the letters A through G. The applicant has also provided addressing all surrounding properties that fall short of the 165 feet of frontage in the Exhibit D in the submitted packet. Should the variance request be granted, the variances required are a 40-foot frontage variance and a 1.5 acre variance for parcel resulting parcel 1 and a 92 frontage variance for parcel 2. At this time, the Planning Department has received no letters or calls of objection to the request. However, the Planning Department has provided a map of the submitted surrounding parcels that were provided by the applicant. Please keep in mind, after much research, the Planning Department determined several of the parcels are lots of record and did not receive a variance to create. They were confirmed on the map of 1977. And I believe the applicant and the representative are both present.
Thank you. I'm assuming Mr. Bresco will. Yep.
I'm going to start.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. I think most of you know me, Tony Bresco. I'm here on behalf of the Lavoies, Deirdre's record owner, but she's here with her husband, Brian. I have all the faith in the world that you guys are able to go through my materials. I'm not here to rehash them with you. I prefer this to be more of a question and answer session where I get to provide the answers to any questions you guys might have. The practical difficulties, the glaring practical difficulty on a lot of these properties situated here in Bedford is the long and skinny nature of them. This one has some additional practical difficulties in the sense that it's agriculturally zoned. Unfortunately, it is comprised of a fair amount of wooded property. So we do have some open ground out there, but the reality is that we couldn't farm 6 of these acres. We probably couldn't farm the majority of these acres, given the way that the water doesn't drain out there in its unimproved fashion. So as it currently sits as an agricultural property, it really is unable to be used as it has been zoned. What we would like to do, and what we think would be a great use of the property, is to create these 2 parcels, leaving the small, less than 900 square foot home situated on a smaller 1 acre parcel so as to minimize the overall burden on the occupant of that parcel for upkeep, maintenance, and anything like that. By the way, that parcel in that property, or this entire parcel in that house, has been in Mr. Lavoie's family, I think, since the inception, since it was constructed. So this is a property that he's been involved with in his family for all of these years. He's been maintaining it, hoping to reduce the maintenance on the 1 acre parcel and shift the burden to somebody in the future on the bigger parcel. But what we want to do is create these 2 parcels so that we have this layout back there, as I indicated, leaving the house, again, very small house situated on this 1 acre parcel, and taking the wooded topography and taking all the woods and everything else and shifting it back into the newly created parcel. We would love to have a property that's exactly comprised to give us, so we could divide it right down the middle and give you 2 3-acre parcels and use it effectively. But because of the woods, because of the wetland area, it's not graded wetland, it just gets wet because it's not properly draining. We think that this is the best use of the property.
Any questions on the board?
Yes, my main question is why couldn't the property just be split half and half even all the way back, and then there would be just one variance needed, and that's the frontage, well, maybe it's 2 variances, the frontage on each parcel. Why would it be difficult to do that? Or is it difficult to do that?
The practical difficulties lie in the way that the property is made up, i.e. the woods, the area, unable to be farming those areas. Of course, we could draw a line right down the middle. And that may, practically speaking, meet the ordinance. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't take into consideration the difficulties that the then landowners would be facing. Specifically, we've got this house that's currently situated on the property. It's been there since the house was constructed, same house. What it would do is it would leave all of this wooded area to that single small house. And while it's not one of the practical difficulties that we're referencing, and it's not the criteria we're asking you to consider, the reality behind it is it would make more sense for us as property owners to have this small house situated on an appropriately sized smaller lot, and then allow the larger lot owner in the future, whoever that might be, to maintain the bulk of the property, the wooded property, the unimproved property, the non-farmable property, rather than situating this small house with that burden. That's not our practical difficulty. That's the thought process behind the reasoning of a 5 versus 1 division. At the end of the day, this long, narrow lot simply isn't situated as an ag property. I mean, it's not functional that way, not with the way it's covered in woods, and not with its current dimensions. We think that this is the best use of the property. We think that this particular variance would be the least restrictive, taking into consideration some of the other factors that I'm referencing, like the existing house, and that's why we're doing it that way.
If I may, one other
Yes,
question. You mentioned some wet areas. Where Where are they? Is it in the back or the front or?
It is in the back. It's near the. So middle of the property, but in front of where a likely new residence would be situated towards the rear of the newly created 5-acre
Okay.
parcel.
So it's. Okay, so it's not up close to the road. It's kind of midway back.
See, just for future reference, if we're going to ask questions, I would like for you to come, because there's people listening online right now, so no problem.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
A couple questions.
Absolutely.
So the argument of the practical difficulties in this case is the long skinny nature of the property. That's point one. Because of that, you can't really split equally to be an AG2 zoning, essentially. The other is if it is going to be classically farmed, as most ag zones would ideally be, there is no way we can farm the location because of the wooded lots in the water. And am I missing it? Are those like those are the main practical difficulties, or am I missing one other aspect of it?
No, those are the main practical difficulties.
Okay.
Simply put, the shape, the irregular shape of this, given its size. If this wasn't such a big piece of property, the irregular shape wouldn't be as difficult. But given the size of this property and given the fact that most of it is woods and the current makeup of it gets wet without the improved portion, which would be behind the existing structure, it makes it nearly impossible to have any real value out of the property from a farming agricultural standpoint. And we're not trying to go down a forestry path here. So, yeah, that's it. Those are exactly the two main practical difficulties that exist on this piece of land.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mr. Brusco? I think I need to ask if there's any public comments, seeing I think we have the applicants. If there's any other comments you would like to make?
My name is Brian Lavoie. Just as Tony mentioned, the property's been in my family since its existence. I believe the record, I think the house was built in the 30s probably. I was the caretaker growing up as a teenager. I was the one that cut the grass and painted the garage when it needed to for the two sisters that lived there. So it was really important to them when we bought it that it stay in the family. Otherwise, we would probably consider selling the whole thing because when we bought it, we didn't have children. Now we have two teenage children, and for selfish reasons, honestly, we'd rather spend time with them than mow grass and cut down trees when they fall or cut up trees and to maintain 6 acres of something that really isn't that usable. So we thought if we could keep the house on 1 acre and off 5 acres and let, as Tony mentioned, let someone else maintain that, it'd be a win-win for us. Hope you guys see it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing that I don't know that we have a lot of public here, if we need to call the applicants up for questions, I think we'll do so. But I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll support that.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All right. So we'll continue with discussion or questions if need be. I'll just open it up to the group here, see if there's any thoughts around the practical difficulties that Mr. Brusco presented, or if there's any other questions. I'll start with one comment. Well, I think it's a valiant effort to talk about how the property is situated. The one thing I would be concerned about if we grant a variance here is that opens the door for a lot of other properties in this township to come make that argument because there's a precedent set. I don't know that we've set that precedent on this board yet that allows that as a practical difficulty. So there's a little bit of apprehension I would have around that. That's my first argument. The other around the ag zoning, I know we've heard these before around it's zoned agriculture, but that doesn't mean you have to farm it. And then, of course, there's other types of agricultural activities such as raising livestock, something of that nature. But then again, I think a lot of people that live on ag property don't actually farm their property either. So I don't know how much of a practical difficulty that might be. That's my thoughts right now, but definitely open to your suggestions from the group.
guess I look at it a little different just because it cannot be farmed. It's hard with a lot of these parcels we have in Bedford that a farmer, at least the few I've talked to, have to have, 50 to 100 acres to make it even worthwhile to go out and do anymore. And people don't want to take care of 6 acres. It's just a lot anymore. I know it's woods you go in and you still have a lot of maintenance. So that's the only thing I look at, that it's conforming kind of to the area, a lot of the other lots, and a lot of the Ag 2 area.
Point. I agree. I can see that. Mr. Dersch, looks like you had a comment. I can see the wheel turning.
I was going to kind of go on the same along the lines of your statement. We've seen this several times, and the tendency tends to be not to want to create more non-conforming lots if we can avoid it. I know Mr. Potter brought up the fact of splitting this in half, perhaps. Then we're only looking at the frontage, which is very similar to probably a lot of the properties in the area as opposed to the acreage restriction.
If you look at I was just looking, just strictly at the images, right, with no measurements in there, it looks like if you were to split right down the middle, though, you're going down the driveway, right? That's, again, not specifically having measurements. And I don't know where, I assume it's on a well or a leach field, where that falls either. I guess in the spirit of it, it seems to kind of make sense to me, logical, the way that it seems to be broken up. I would agree. One variance is better than 2, but considering the way it's set up, it seems to me to make sense. And it is, again, like you said, it's kind of sets precedent, but it is, in terms of the spirit of, or the conforming, the surrounding properties, it seems to be in, kind of a similar conformance, or still be more in conformance than these others would be if they were subject to the current restrictions.
Mr. Potter?
Thank you. The way I look at it, and again, without measurements and stuff, it looks like splitting it in half wouldn't impact the existing driveway or house or any of the buildings at all. And the other point is, yes, there are parcels around that are long and narrow and have had a small amount split off for maybe an acre or something in a home, and then the rest of it, the larger piece in the back. There's several examples of that, but there's also several examples of long, narrow properties, 2 of them right next door, 3. And I don't know. Personally, I don't see, I can understand why somebody wants to split the property, and it's certainly, that option is certainly available in the zoning now with taking ag property down to 2.5 acres. In this case, I would understand a practical difficulty being that it's 6 acres and you want to split it down the middle. Neither parcel is going to have enough frontage, but it's still 2.5 acres and a little bit in excess of 2.5 acres. But why? I could understand that being a practical difficulty, but I don't understand the practical difficulties as presented. They don't. Anyway, I'm more for just splitting the property down the middle and making it 2 parcels with the only variance needed is the frontage and not the area and the frontage.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about, we could play a little bit of devil's advocate too. Let's do a hypothetical argument here. If we split the properties in the manner which it's suggested here, you've got a 1-acre lot in ag. Most typically, I'm thinking people that buy a piece of property out further away from town is so that they can maybe put up a pole barn, have some hobbies. Is a 1-acre lot in ag going to allow for that to happen?
Yeah, as long as they have the proper setbacks.
Because I know that the house is relatively small, right? So
Right.
it's not taking up a huge footprint. So that's another argument around, keeping it the way it is, right? And then I'm
Mr.
also-
Chairman,
Yes.
just some food for thought. If you are inclined to grant a variance, keep in mind that it will have to be subject to the depth to width ratio approval by the Township Board. So any motion that's made needs to have that to be a component or part of that motion, because this will require going to the Township Board for that, because it exceeds what can be administratively done. So with that said, if you split it down the middle, you would require, or 2 depth to width ratio variances, so to speak, would be required as opposed to 1. Secondly, just some food for thought, if you split it down the middle, I'm assuming, and you got to be careful when you assume, but I'm assuming from a practical standpoint, and I don't know these applicants, I don't know what their plans are, or if they'll sell it, if they'll market it, but if you split it down the middle, you are a prospective purchaser, not that we're here by any means to assist somebody in marketing a piece of property, but you would, I think, create some potential problems with setbacks, because if somebody wanted to buy a larger piece of property, build in the back, and it was wider back there, essentially you're not changing the width in the back where some building might occur, where someone might want an accessory building, something like that. And as a practical matter, whether you split it down the middle or you split it as proposed, you're going to end up with 2 homes, no matter what. So it's really not going to change the way the property looks now, except that in the back, someday a home might be built back there, and someday an accessory building might be built back there. So just some food for thought in terms of what it would look like in the future if a variance is granted, and what it will require from the Township Board in terms of 2 approvals for a depth to width ratio. Is there anything I missed with that, Jody?
I just wanted to add that the reason for the larger frontage on where the home is for the applicant to meet the minimum setback of 15 feet should the new parcel be created. He has to have a minimum of 15, a total of 30 for agriculturally zoned property. So that was their, just in speaking with their representative, the intent was to make sure they could at least meet the setback from the existing home to the newly created parcel, not excusing the 1 acre from the 2.5 acres required, but the setback of the frontage was created of the 125 to create that 15-foot setback.
Setback
If that
from-
provides some clarification on the frontage requirements that they were asking for.
The setback from the home to the property line.
To the home
Right,
from the property
yeah.
line to create that frontage.
So on what's been referred to here in your discussion as a skinny lot or skinny lots, and there's several of them there, several that have prior legal non-conforming status because they predated the adoption of the zoning ordinance in 1977. So when you take that into consideration, I think it's very important to maintain setbacks, as Dennis said, to the building line if you're going to allow parcels like that to be created. And again, splitting it down the middle, although just thinking it through, that that might be a good way to go. The house in 1 acre is not going to change the appearance from Secor Road, and if something would more than likely be built in the back, assuming that the property will support it, assuming that it's not a regulated wetland. They were talking about it gets wet back there. So assuming all those things can be met, and I guess now there's going to be water available to that particular parcel. It's running down Secor Road in the new loop that's being created by South County Water. So water would be available to each of those parcels. Just food for thought.
Okay. So we got another.
Good, yes.
Thank you. I didn't think about that. So what's being discussed is, say it's split down the middle, that's about 99 feet. That may not be enough. You're talking setback from the building to the side yard.
Right. It's not a real good quality lot to put a house and drainage and septic systems. Like Brad could share, he'd rather see 2 acres and 4 acres than to see 2 3-acre lots that are long and skinny. Right? Square areas that he could actually be able to construct a home and still have proper setbacks. And this might get a fence put down it someday. So you will see the 1 acre and the 5 acres. So, but that's the other part is,
Maybe
I don't have a problem with square pieces. If this was a 2 and 4, that would be the optimum that I would like to see, but that's my own personal opinion.
well, I guess what I'm getting at then, would or could that be a practical difficulty that existing home or even a new home, in order to get a home in there and the setback to the side yard,
I don't know
splitting it
that
down the
that's-
middle is more of a difficulty for the property owner than the split as it shows now.
I don't know if you would
Does that make
define it
sense?
as a practical difficulty, but I would certainly define it as a practical consideration looking forward as to what might be created in the future and being able to maintain setbacks to the boundary lines and keeping the property looking virtually the same as it looks today, except someday back in the back, a house might be built. And Dennis is right, that 1 acre parcel could be fenced off, and that would delineate one parcel from the other. But that, where you're up at Secor Road, that's going to be used primarily, I presume, as a driveway.
Correct.
You go back.
73-foot driveway here.
Yeah, I mean, you'd put it wherever it would be optimal to put it, but yeah, that's, I mean, again, I express no opinion one way or the other. It's just, those are some things to think about when you're deliberating on this.
So I think really we've got 3 practical difficulties. Actually, there's a third one I was thinking of that was the conforming to surrounding area. Now, I think that in itself, a lot of those areas were prior non-conforming before the ordinance, and we have to look at the merits of the current case in front of us, right? So we have to think through that. I'm still kind of defaulting to the point of which I don't know if I want to set that precedent around the long and skinny as being an opportunity to create a practical difficulty for future properties. That there are a lot of long and skinny properties in this township. And I don't know if that's a slippery slope we want to go down. And I get that this isn't really an agricultural usage in this property, even though it's zoned AG. Just because it's zoned AG means you can farm it, doesn't mean it has to be farmed.
I mean, a principal permitted use within an agricultural district is building a home, principal dwelling unit, so.
Well, do you think then too, I guess the precedent, when you said, would you be setting a precedent if you based it entirely on that particular practical difficulty, right? If the practical difficulty and the only one was it's a long skinny lot, then you set that precedent. But if you to your point, you mentioned a third, right? But if there's 2 or 3 other similar, maybe not, they're not the primary ones, but they're additional ones, then the next person that comes along with and says, I have a long skinny lot, look at this, which you're not supposed to do anyway, right? It has to be on its own merit, but there's other extenuating ones. So I suppose something to think about.
So if we need more discussion, we can have it unless somebody is semi-prepared for a motion. Or we can talk through the arguments again and see if we've got a case against or for.
Can we talk through the practical? I know we're talking the long skinny lot, but the other 2 that you, just to be clear what everybody's thinking or what you're.
So the other was agricultural usage. The property really doesn't lend itself to be used in a sense of what you'd see a farm. used. So that's the other argument. I don't know what the group's thoughts are on that.
I don't
I
don't
think
buy
that's a
the-
little weak. As we said, it can be used for other uses other than just farming. I know we kind of lean on that interpretation quite a bit, and that drives a lot of these practical difficulties for these splits, but that's not the only use to be considered for that property.
Right? And if it was zoned residential and it was the same size lot, we'd have to come up with a different argument. There's also the water drainage, but that kind of lends itself to also the agricultural difficulties, actually farming the property. We can talk about conforming to the surrounding area. That was one of the other practical difficulties that was brought up. The other properties around also were unique in its size and length. I don't know if we want to talk through that a little bit more. If we feel that that would be an appropriate practical difficulty. Mr. Potter?
Again, that doesn't seem, I mean, some properties are already split, like this one is desired to be split, and other properties are split long and narrow. So that doesn't seem to me, anyway, being a difficulty. The only practical difficulty that I could agree with is if it's has to do with the nature of the existing home and outbuildings needing a reasonable space between them and the property lines, and what's left over in that frontage is something quite a bit less, like say the 125 feet and 73 feet is the practical way to split one parcel from the other. See what I mean? Say if the building has what I'm hearing, or at least what I think I'm hearing, is that the existing home and outbuildings need about 125 feet to be
To have the appropriate setbacks.
yeah, to have the appropriate space in between a property line and that. And then the fact that whatever is left, like Phil had indicated, there's going to be two homes on there, no matter what, no matter how we agree to split it. So if there's going to be a narrow piece and a wider piece, then I guess I don't know if it matters how the acreage difference. I am. I'm changing because initially I thought, well, it makes sense to just split it down the middle and have only one variance needed. But now it seems like,
With the existing property, you
The-
really can't do it.
yeah, if I stick to that, then it,
Just say, with the existing dwelling,
it makes
cannot-
it,
You cannot do that.
it makes it, I don't know, difficult or impossible. So to me, anyway, that's the practical difficulty that I could stand behind. The rest of it doesn't, the other practical difficulties proposed are, to me, weak.
But so let's play that one out a little bit. With the dwelling on the 1 acre lot being the practical difficulty, what would that be though? Because that would be, in my mind, you're talking about something that's self-created, because really you don't have to split it. But if you're going to split it, you have to have enough frontage to allow the appropriate setbacks. So if you're not going to split it, then what do the setbacks matter?
No, you're right. In that regard, it is self-created, because the owner wants to split it. But if we're going to be okay with splitting it, however, it's starting to make more sense to me to make it like 125 feet of frontage and 73 feet of frontage
If it's going to be split.
if it's going to be split.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It's not a problem the way it sits, other than that's not what the owner wants.
Right. All right. So we kind of talked through all three of the practical difficulties. Mr. Holm, looks like you've got a question.
I was just
Yeah,
curious,
thought.
the depth of the 1 acre lot, is it around 350 feet per my math? Is it? Okay,
I don't have an exact, we were waiting for a survey to give exact dimensions.
okay. I was just calculating what 1 acre is. I'm just trying to put through my head if there is enough room, if someone wanted to put an outbuilding on a 1 acre piece with what's there and the way everything's laid out. Per my math, I think if someone wanted to do a 30 by 50 pole barn, there is room there
Okay.
behind the garage.
Does anybody need any more discussion, or do we think we have an opinion on which way we're swaying here? Some additional conversation.
Denny had indicated that, or somebody, I'm not sure who, somebody indicated that a 6 acre piece split into 2 acres and 4 acres seems like a better ratio, or at least a different idea. I'm not sure if that's worth,
I think if you had the appropriate frontage, I think that would make sense.
okay.
Because 2 and 4 still doesn't make it, right? I mean, that's still 2 variances.
Still mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you got a 2 acre skinny lot, 2
It's
acre
just
deep
making
skinny.
them move farther away from that other house. So you'd have 2
Yeah.
more spacious lots.
Yeah, I think that,
Okay, I'm just
Wet
bringing that
area.
up in case it was worth any
Sure.
further discussion.
yeah, I think the wet area would force any future dwelling in well behind the existing one, which was one of my initial concerns is that we've seen this before, someone building a dwelling immediately behind someone else in their backyard.
Right? You're gonna have a long driveway if you did 2 acres with that scenario.
And I, looking at the land, the lower area definitely is in the, I'm thinking the driveway's gonna have to be 500-600 anyways, to get back to, and I'm going off the colored picture, the sandy area where it looks a little higher.
All right.
I guess I'm still not, you had a better, I think, comprehension, in my opinion, of what you were looking at as the practical difficulties, but I like the idea, I understood your concern of having the one in the long and skinny lot. I guess when we've talked before about other things and setting a precedent based on one thing, I know you've got to be really careful with that. So I guess I liked the idea of, or understood better the idea when you mentioned, or when we've talked about additional items that may separate this from the other long skinny lots, where somebody couldn't, and I don't think they really can, right? But that somebody couldn't come in and say, well, I have the long skinny lot, and based on that other decision, I'd like to get this variance. This, I think, has some other items that at least are worth discussing that may differentiate it from the other long skinny lots. So,
Well, and I think about this too, right? So if the practical difficulty is a long skinny lot, well, wouldn't that also be, in a way, self-created? Why would you have to split the lot if it's long and skinny? Other than it's just a desire to have it split.
but somebody that's going to, if, say the house is sold, right? Somebody that's going to buy that house and live in that house, which is a couple bedroom house, 900 square feet, is not going to be, at least in my opinion, isn't going to be the person that then takes care of the 6 acres.
Right.
Unless they tear that place down or do something else, or,
True. I think, when I think about a practical difficulty for a split, something like this, if somebody wants to have a split to get to that AG2 zoning, a split that would, change up the, maybe the acreage or the frontage would be if they had a creek running through the middle of the property, right? That's, to me, that feels like a more of a practical difficulty to have a split in a way that isn't conventional. That would just be my argument on that. Anybody prepared for a motion? I think Mr. Dersh has some notes down. Not ready yet. You could cobble one together if somebody's prepared.
I'll prepare a motion. All right, I prepare a motion that we approve as presented, parcel 1 and 2 for 10, the address is 10138 Secor Road, parcel number 5802-008-010-00. Looking to approve the variance for a 40-foot frontage variance on the proposed parcel 1 and a 1.5 acre variance for depth. The third motion would be a 92-foot frontage variance for parcel 2. Parcel 2, if this is approved, needs to go in front of the township board to get the approval for the 6-to-1 ratio. Practical difficulties being per discussion from my notes here. The land is not conducive to ag, to farm, to create the setbacks to keep the existing home with the proper distances from the property. Is there anything?
I think what was in there, I think you also mentioned conforming to surrounding area was a piece there as well.
And conforming to the surrounding areas. There's plenty of lots that kind of conform with or look like that I'm trying to approve.
We have a motion. Is there support or any friendly amendments?
Can we have a friendly amendment before there's support?
Yes, absolutely. That would be the appropriate way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. I'm not sure if I got this correct. You mentioned 3 practical difficulties.
Yes.
I think personally, I think conforming to surrounding area and not conducive to farming, I think those could be troublesome practical difficulties to mention in this. I would rather stick with the second one where it had to do with necessary setback for the existing home, because that would make, so my friendly amendment would be drop practical difficulties 1 and 3 and keep 2. That way, down the road, it makes, I mean, each of our decisions can stand alone, are based on whatever the merits are of that particular case. And in this particular case, it seems like the thing that makes it unique is the fact that the existing building needs setbacks to make it usable, and that creates a narrow chunk of frontage, a more narrow chunk of frontage than just splitting it a different way. I don't know, is my thinking?
Why don't you make a factual finding that the creation or that the granting of this variance would create 2 lots that are similar in nature to the existing lots in the immediate area. You're not saying it's a practical difficulty, but you're making a factual finding that the creation of these 2 lots by granting the requested variances conforms to the nature of the neighborhood and the immediate area.
Okay.
It's a different way of saying it, but you're a quasi-judicial body, so you can make a finding of fact to that extent and make it part of the motion.
Okay.
So, just a suggestion.
That would be another friendly amendment.
It would?
Yes, I'm saying it would. Is that
I accept your friendly amendment.
Okay.
okay?
You got that, Katrina.
Then I
got your support then?
Then I can
Okay.
support
Okay.
that, yes. Mhm.
All right. So we have a motion, we have support. Jody, if you would please call the vote.
Mr. Helm,
Yes.
Mr. Potter,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Jersch,
No.
Mr. Lake.
No.
Motion carried.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone that'd like to make public comment. I know that we do have one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And then next we'll move on to board and staff comments.
The deadline for the next meeting is August 22nd. And please keep in mind that the meeting will be September 12th, the second Monday due to the holiday. That is all I have. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Potter, for serving tonight on short notice.
Thank you for asking.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I'm good.
My pleasure to be here.
Nothing on my end.
I'm good.
All right. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
We got a second right here. We're good.